So, for my fellow diehard Last of Us fans, please tell me I'm not alone when anytime a new character shows up on screen, I'm like, oh, there's Marlene. Oh, yeah, that's how we're going to be the entire series. But man, it is a fun ride so far. I'm going to give you my thoughts and reactions to the first episode of HBO's The Last of Us right after the jump. Hello, everyone. Terrence here with Hollywood Already Did It. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, share, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, ring that bell below. Anytime we have something, you will be among the first to know. There is no way in hell that I was not talking about this series. For folks who saw my Uncharted review, also Neil Druckmann, I have a connection to this series a lot. I used to be a massive Xbox head. Like, that was my life. I lived it, loved it. Didn't think I would ever turn away. And then two games took me off my path, and I've now been a Sony head from that point on. One of them was Uncharted. The other was The Last of Us. And still to this day, one of the most gripping and gut-wrenching stories that I've ever seen. And this is for both part one and part two together. I consider them one entire through-line story. But it is, wow, it is a lot. And so it's a game that story-wise already had the richness and empathy and weight to actually be a series, unlike a lot of video games prior. And so when I heard that Neil Druckmann was also going to be a part of writing and directing and being just the spear showrunner of this, I was like, well, this is probably the best one that we're going to get. So far, after seeing the first episode of Last of Us, I think we're on the right track. First episode of Last of Us is called When You're Lost in the Darkness. I'm going to try and figure out how I'm going to say this, because there are obviously, as a Last of Us fan, a Last of Us gamer, there are a lot of things that I'm aware of and how some things are going to end versus where we're at in the story. So I'm going to do everything humanly possible to tell you what's happening for face value in the episode that we're watching and leave what I know about the future out of there. I will try to slap myself on the hand if I ever get to a point where I'm like, you know what? We're not there yet. So trust me, spoilers for just this episode, not for the series as a whole. I'm going to do my best to stay away from that. So what we have in this episode, it's a long one. It's a lengthy episode. I hope they're all this long. It's meaty, and I never got tired. But it sort of acts as three parts. One part is super, super short, but it's the prologue to the prologue. This is a scene that did not occur in the video games, but it's sort of a news show that happens in the 60s. And it's sort of two prognosticators talking about pandemics and disease and all that stuff. And it's being held by a host with an audience. Cameras are watching, they're smoking. You know what you can do in the 60s. You can smoke anywhere you wanted to. But they're having a conversation about just pandemics and viruses. And what we get the short end of it is that one of them believes that pandemics occur in viruses. And for the most part, it's going to happen. He's concerned about it. The other one says, yeah, some viruses, they'll happen, but I'm not that concerned about those. It's the fungus ones that I'm concerned about. And he starts going, like fungus or like LSDs, and they affect the brain. Fungus, viruses come and go. You find a way to beat them and you kind of get them out your system. Funguses attack the brain and they start to stay in. They attach themselves to the host. It alters the mind completely, and it causes you to do things that you would normally not do. It also then just feeds on the host, but it never kills the host. It just prevents it from decaying. So it's basically laying the groundwork of how, it's a small seed to sort of lay the groundwork of how all of this sort of works. It's a seed that we don't really get in the games because that stuff sort of comes in books that we read and information that we get along. This is just a way to put it in film form so that the audience that's coming along with this can kind of like, okay, cool, got it. That's what we're saying. This is the fungus that spreads off to the races. Capiche? But again, that's not a piece that actually occurred in the games. We then open on the prologue. And the prologue is what was the beginning sequence in the Last of Us game. For most people, this is sort of the moment that snatched you into the game. It's the part that I was dreading and going into this show, because I knew it was going to be painful to watch. But man, boy, is it. We meet Joel, who's our main protagonist, Joel Miller, and his daughter Sarah Miller. This scene sequence, this prologue version, changes a couple of things, but the fixed point is still the same. All in all, what we're going to see is that we're going to lose Sarah in this opening prologue. What we get here is actually a lot more heartfelt and a lot more brutal, because we get to see Sarah in her element. We get to see her going to go do things. We get to see Sarah being the little bratty kid to her aging dad, her 36-year-old dad, on his birthday, and but also being kind of responsible for him, taking care of him because the mom's gone already. You can sort of see that. But she goes off to school. She's a confident and strong-willed person. She goes off to school. She's caring. She cares about her neighbors. She's willing to put her best foot forward. It is a very in-depth and beautiful sequence to sort of learn more about her. She goes to steal money out of Joel's drawer and gets a watch to fix the watch because it's something that he would never ever do himself. But she also then admits to him that, yeah, I took the money from you because you would never have done it. And he's kind of like, yeah, you're right. He gives that look that dads give, like, yeah, you got me. I wouldn't have fixed it. But you can tell that there's a closeness between the two of them, and they have a routine. She knows what movies he loves. They are each other's yin and yang. So it just makes the sequel in them even more palpable and even more closer together, so that when we get to what we're going to get to, for those of you who did know it was coming, it makes it a lot rougher on the viewer. What I do love about the sequence and some of the things that I was thinking, because I did know what was about to occur, is that I'm sort of paying attention to the background, the foreground, and how things are being delivered to us. I think it's amazing sequences when she's in the watch shop, just going to get her watch before really anything else starts occurring. We just start seeing police cars and ambulances going by. And I'm like, man, they've been going by all day. Just those hints that something is amiss, something is happening. And then all of a sudden the co-worker comes out. It's like, yeah, you got to leave. Go home. You need to go home. But thinking nothing of it because she is none the wiser. And most viewers are none the wiser, but us gamers are kind of like, we know where this is going. She then goes to her neighbor's home to check in on her and kind of take care of her and bake some cookies. But then there's a cool shot with her in the foreground and the elderly woman in the background, sort of contorting and having convulsions and sort of getting to the point where, like, oh, she's hitting the point where she's changing, and this is about to get ugly for this entire family. So it's sort of a bit of a foreshadowing, if you will. But then we see a sequence where Sarah giving the gifts off to Joel, she falls asleep on his lap as they watch the film that she doesn't care about, but she knows it's her dad's favorite thing to do on his birthday. He tucks her in. When he tucks her in, he gets a call from Tommy to say, hey, I got put in jail. Can you come bail me out? I can't be here all weekend. Joel's like, oh, Jesus, okay, fine, I'll come get you. And he puts her into bed, and it's at 11:02 on the clock. Sarah wakes up about 3 hours later around 2:16, and Bedlam has begun. Everything is chaos. It looks like it's happening outside. She tries to turn on the TV. It's a national emergency. Nothing is on the TV anymore. Nothing is on the radio. It has gone completely haywire. It is completely dead. Part of that stuff that's happening in the home that happens in the game. The dog comes in and hits the window. It's all part of it. And so she goes to the neighbor's home and kind of is looking around. She finds blood, and she sees the two neighbors. One woman she was helping to cook cookies with, Miss Adler, and I believe we didn't see him earlier. Maybe the husband have been killed, and the elderly woman that was contorting earlier, yeah, she about that life now. She's twisting and turning. She's looking for blood, and she comes and starts chasing her out. And that's when Joel and Tommy pull up, and they tell Sarah to get in the truck. And I love this sequence. This sequence is stunning because you're just watching madness. You're watching the world descend into pure chaos, and it is sad and terrifying to watch because you're doing it in real time with them. No one knows what's going on, so you're seeing it from Sarah's point of view. It's like, what is happening? And she's just an empathetic person anyway. They're running by people who are asking for help in the road. They have kids, and Joel's like, nope, can't do it. I got a kid myself. We got to protect ourselves. I can't worry about what the hell else is happening in this world because we don't know what this is. They're just watching Bedlam coming out the streets are starting to fill with more and more people. More chaos is happening. And eventually a plane comes to crash, and it causes the car to flip over. And Tommy ends up on one side. Joel and Sarah end up on the other. Sarah has a bad limb. Her leg's hurting. So they're Picks her up. They try to run out. They get caught up in a situation where it looks pretty cool. You see an undead, if you will, bouncing from one side to another as they try to get out. And a military person comes in and shoots them and saves them. And they don't think they're good. They're in a good spot. Joel says to them that, hey, we're not infected. We're not infected. Please help us. But the orders that the military person is getting over the radio is to say, just kill them all. Because this happens a lot if you can try to contain it in the world that you're in, they're like, well, just murder everybody there. That's why you see bomber jets coming. It's like, just kill everybody there. That way we can sort of contain it and then just build anew. So they're going to try to kill Joel and Sarah. And so he opens fire on them. And then Tommy comes and shoots the military person. But not before, unfortunately, Sarah is shot and killed. It hurts. It hurts. I thought it would hurt less because you know what it's coming, but no, it hurts because you fall in love with Sarah. And it's the brief moments that you do in this show. She's such an adorable, sweet, and kind-hearted person that you just fall in for her, and it hurts. So this gives a little bit more to the umph of why Joel goes sort of down the path that he does. This adds a little bit of a layer of PTSD and an untrusting of the military or police in this situation because Joel's like, you are responsible for the death of my daughter. So it just adds another layer onto him. And that, folks, is the prologue. If you play the game, and I would suggest people at the very least, if you can get your hands on a PS4 or 5, try to pop in that Last of Us and try to work along this as the show goes along, because I think you'll be in for a bit of a treat. But do it after you watch it first, then play. You don't want to spoil it. We get a 20-year jump. Joel is now 56, as he was 36 on his birthday at the point in time that the prologue takes place. And he's in Boston. We're in sort of a quarantine zone in Boston, and the world is nothing like we've seen in the previous sequence. That is complete chaos. Everything is sort of decrepit. Buildings are dead. People. It's just, it looks bad. It looks like a terrible and newfound world that we all don't want to be a part of. We are immediately just shown, just for the sake of how the rules in this place work. If somebody approaches the quarantine zone, they bring them in and they test them. Green means they're good to go, not infected. Cool, all things are bets off. But they sort of tie people up first before they get to that point. If they're red, that means they're infected, and we may have to just go ahead and kill you and then dispose of your body. It's a ruthless approach, but it is what has kept this area safe and is what is sort of going to keep them safe long term. Joel is doing menial jobs like crap sweeping, crap cleaning, street sweeping, burning of bodies. He's a part of that. But the biggest thing that he's doing is he's a smuggler. He is a smuggler to help bring in contraband, drugs, smokes, whatever he can to sort of get the things that he needs so that he can continue on his day-to-day. Whatever he needs, whatever it may be, he's willing to go find it and smuggle it and do some dirty things to sort of make it all happen. He's got deals with officers in this area. He knows people of the Fireflies, which is if the Fireflies, you'll start seeing logos. You see it a couple times in this episode. They are a militia group, revolutionary militia group, if you will. Some folks call them terrorists, depends on what side of the world you're on, but they are people who have sort of galvanized together to sort of go against the man, if you will. But Joel is a smuggler trying to just make ends meet and try to get from one day to another. He's also hurting. He's really in pain. He's a pill popper, drinker, still wearing the watch that his sweet Sarah gave him, but he's in a bad way, and is just living from day to day, mainly to keep Tommy and see what's going on with Tommy. That's sort of his focus now, because Tommy did save his life, so he feels the need to kind of like, I need to do this for you. We are introduced to Tess, who is Joel's smuggling partner. They have sort of become the yin and yang of each other in this. She's more of the smarter of the brains of the operation of the two, and he's more the muscle. And so she thinks ways out, and he shoots and punches his way out of things. But they are a good team. They have she climbs into bed with him, but nothing romantic happens. They have flirty moments, but it doesn't seem like there's actual there's not an actual relationship there. But the two of them have been working to get a battery for their truck because they need to get out of the quarantine zone to go drive off to go find Tommy, who's been missing for 3 weeks. He went to go on a mission that's supposed to have only taken a day or so, and he's not responded. So now Joel is concerned, and he feels he has to go get her. And so Tess and the two of them are trying to smuggle things to get this battery. The battery, unfortunately, has been double sold. It was supposed to be sold to them, but it has now been sold to someone else. And that doesn't sit well with Tess and Joel. So they're on their way to go find Robert, who's the person who sold it to most people, and kind of rough him up and see what's going on with their battery. While that is happening, we meet Marlene and Kim. Marlene is the Queen Firefly. They haven't used that term yet, but that's the spoiler that I can give you because she sort of says she's the head of the Fireflies in this region. But she's referred to as the Queen Firefly. And she's willing to want to do some things differently. She's like, hey, we have not been winning this. If you think that we're winning, we're not. We have some work to do, and we need to do some things a little different with the other. And this girl that I'm holding on to might be the key to sort of fixing that. We'll get into that as we get to the tail end of this. But she's very much a hard-nosed person, but she also has a heart for Ellie, who at this point is referring to herself as Veronica. But Marlene knows who she is because Marlene lets her know that, hey, I am the one who put you in the orphanage that you were in. I've always been around. We don't know why that is yet, according to this. But she's always sort of been around. So she unlocks her out of the chain that she had, that they were having her kept captive in, and saying that she's free, but we need to kind of move you to another place so that you can kind of help our resistance, if you will. So then we have a sequence where Marlene, Kim, Joel, Tess, and Ellie all sort of converge on a spot. Because where Robert was trying to sell the battery, he was trying to sell it to both. And the battery's there, but it's useless. It's not a battery that works. But there was an ambush that happened, and a firefight happened. Marlene's hit. She's been kind of injured, and a lot of her team has been removed. So she is no longer able to go and move Ellie safely the way that she wanted to. So she asked Joel to. She's aware of Joel. She knows Joel. She knows Tommy. Joel mentions to her that, hey, you had my brother turn on me. It's like, Joel, I don't have time for this. It is clear, I don't think I'm spoiling too much, but at some point in time, Tommy had been associated with Marlene more than he had been associated with Joel. She says to the effect, like, I know what you're doing. Everybody, we're all aware that you're trying to go save your brother. There's nothing that happens in here that I'm not aware of, but this is bigger than just your brother. She doesn't tell her what. She's like, but I need you to do me a favor, because she knows that they're smugglers. She's like, I need you to do me a favor. I can't right now. I'm not in the best health, and I just lost half my team. Can you take her to the point that I need her to be at, and get her to my people at the safe spot? And they do. They agree to. And they agree to mainly because Tessa kind of just brings up that, hey, Fedra has, even if this is BS and we don't trust Marlene and she turns her back on us, what I do believe is that Fedra has an entire trucks there of massive supplies and batteries. If something, even if this doesn't work, they have enough stuff there that we can find stuff that we can kind of salvage and make this trip worthwhile so that we can continue on and go find Tommy. So they're like, all right, fine, let's go do it. So they take her, and they, before they head out, they stop by Joel's safe spot, his home, and Joel gets in a little nap, a power nap. When he's doing that, Ellie and he have a bit of a conversation back and forth. You can see that it's a bit contentious at the moment. She's like, your watch is broken, kind of just ignores it. He hears it, he clocks it, but, he's in pain, blah, blah. The biggest thing here that's sort of important for the last beat of this is that there's a CB radio that sort of broadcasts messages in codes to Joel from two people named Bill and Frank. We don't see Bill and Frank in this episode. I am told that they're going to get an entire episode to themselves in the future, but just clock those names, Bill and Frank. There is sort of this decoder book that Ellie sees that says 60s, nothing new. If you hear any 60s music coming across the radio, nothing new. If it's 70s music coming across, it's some new stuff that you might want to get over here and get. And if you hear 80s music, it just has an X. And so Ellie, being sort of a smart person, a little bit of a brat, but she is well aware of who she is and what she is and how smart she is. Joel wakes up from his little nap and she's kind of like, I read your book and I figured out the code. And it's like, oh, while you were asleep, by the way, and this did not happen. She's lying to him. She's like, by the way, there's a song that came on, Don't Wake Me Up Before You Go. And you could see Joel's face tense up and get frightened. And she says, I just broke your code. 80s music means trouble's happening. There's something bad. So it's a couple of things there that, one, even though she is a kid and most definitely born after this whole outbreak has occurred, someone has taught her music of the 80s and the 70s. So she's a child that is learned. She knows things. It's a small cue. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal because it's just about music, but she knows musical history and the ages. She knows that Don't Wake Me Up Before You Go is a song that came out in the 80s. That's kind of important because most kids today don't even know what song came out 10 years ago. So then they're off to try to escape. They're off to try to do the smuggling ring. They have a little pathway through the street. They try to break it open and go out. And as they try to escape, the cop that Joel was smuggling drugs and stuff to earlier, who did give him a warning saying stay off the streets, is there taking a piss. And he turns and sees them. He's like, oh, come on. And he tells all three of them, Joel, Tess, and Ellie, to get on the ground. He's going to do the test thing that we saw at the beginning. Green, you're good. Red, you're not. He does Tess first. He does Joel. Both pop up as green. He goes to tag Ellie and takes the test, but Ellie snaps and freaks out and stabs him with the knife that she's been carrying around that Marlene actually gave to her. Stabs her, and then they have sort of a standoff. The sequence that occurred at the beginning with Sarah flashes back into his brain when he's holding her and the military person has a gun at them. It happens. He sees the PTSD and he has it, and Joel snaps, charges him, and just starts beating the living crap out of this man to a bloody pulp. And he's in a rage and an anger that you have not yet seen in it, because we've only seen peaceful Dad Joe and we've seen broken man, old man Joel. But there's a life in there that has become hardened and angry and visceral that we are going to learn as this series goes along, that we just got a glimpse of right there. And it helps now to have sort of that trigger of his dislike for military folks is going to be strong and pertinent, which is amazing because in this, you can see that he was a veteran. Either he or Tommy were a veteran because they have a little truck, a little veteran symbol on the back of the truck. He's a bloody pope, and then all of a sudden Tess looks back and sees the readout for Ellie, and it's red, meaning she's infected. However, she's not showing any signs. And Ellie's like, no, I'm not sick. I'm not sick. This is from, she shows him the bite or the claw, the bite that occurred. It's like, this is from 3 weeks ago and it's completely healed over. It's got some, scabbing and weird indentation on her arm, but it's closed up and there's no blood. It's like, no, but that's from 3 weeks ago. And they're all a little confused and they can continue on. What we've learned, and since that sort of just gives that away, is that she has been bitten, but for some weird reason, she hasn't turned. And we don't know where, why, or how. But I believe Marlene's entire goal is to sort of find out why she is. Why is that happening? And hopefully that she can sort of help create something that allows us to sort of get out of this mess. She's sort of the key. And she mentions that in passing a little bit. She's like, she's the key. She's bigger than all of us. That's sort of what Marlene is leading on to. We then see a final sequence back in Joel's home with the CB radio going off. And it is playing a song called Never Let Me Down Again by the Depeche Mode. Mind you, I did not know this by heart, so I had to actually look this one up. But it's playing an 1980s song, 87, I believe, to be specific, by the Depeche Mode called Never Let Me Down Again. Meaning, trouble's on its way. Bill and Frank are sending them a code. They're saying, don't come, trouble is on the horizon. Very foreboding, very foreshadowing, and then we go to dark, and that is the episode. Well, damn, that was a dense, intense episode. We haven't even really begun the point where we are on the road. This whole episode was set up. A lot of setup of seeing the happy part of Joel and what he was doing in construction and hustling for his daughter and just being a part of that family man. Seeing that he would do everything to keep his family safe, and then seeing the broken man and how we now in this world that is completely different than what we had before, who he has become and what he has become now, and sort of now how he sort of grows this relationship and becomes this something more with Ellie. Not there yet. They really don't know each other, but they're, as we go along to see what that relationship becomes, will be very important, and to have that base point of what he and Sarah used to have. Action is good. It's not much in this one, but you have moments where you're like, oh, this can turn really quickly. But this was a lot of let's put our major characters on the board, and then for the next episodes, let's go through the ride. It's gonna be painful. It's gonna be intense. It's gonna be scary. But I promise you, if you love this episode, which I did, you are in for a massive treat. Thank you, Neil Druckmann, for being a part of this. I think what we're going to learn as we go along with all these video game properties are sort of being turned into games with God of War and BioShock and all of them coming down the pike. I think it's best if you keep the writer of whatever version of the game you want to sort of portray on screen. You keep that writer attached as a writer or code runner or anything else other than executive producer, because that's a tag that doesn't really mean anything. I think you can come up with something and get to the heartbeat of what this is. This feels like Last of Us. It feels like we're watching extended play, an extended version of Last of Us without having to pick up a controller. And a lot of times where these games to movies and TV shows fail is because there's a disconnect. If I don't have the controller in my hand, I no longer feel that heartbeat or that connection to the audience. The first thing that this does is build that connection and that heartbeat. I think when you have a long form show, you can spend 30 to 40 minutes of your first episode just talking about this is who this person was before. And even though that a lot of people know that some of these characters won't be a part of this, it allows us to build and build and build before we get to a point where it all just sort of comes to a head. Beautiful stuff here. What did you guys think about the first episode of The Last of Us? You'll leave your thoughts and comments in the comments below. If you haven't already, you can follow us on Twitter at HollywoodADI, or you can hit us up on email at HollywoodAlreadyDidIt@gmail.com. We also have a podcast with the same name that's on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere that plays podcasts. We're there. And like always, I got my ticket. You got yours.